Shalom and good day all, this is Tehillim29 back again for another indie comic review, and in this indie comic review I'll be covering Little Monsters and Mind Management Bootleg by Matt Kindt and also Jeff Lemire here. So the one that I'll be starting off with first will be Little Monsters. So, starting off with first things first, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside with the story? Sure enough it does, because the character that is on the cover is Yui, and we actually learn that she's from Japan, and also gets a bit of an encounter in her past as to what led her on the path to where she is now. So, for that, I gave the cover a 7 out of 10. Now, this is some of the internal art, which covers around some of the early events in regards to Yui's past, and we actually get to meet the vampire that played a part in turning her to what she is in the present. I'll now jump towards the middle of the story in regards to showing some of the art and also what's happening story-wise. And as we start to catch up with our little monsters, they try to chase someone off, as well as catch up with others. And we have Ronnie and Raymond here, and of course one of them have lost their head. And last but not least, towards the end, to which we have one of the characters now being brought into a position to which, guess what, you might end up playing a part in the death and the destruction of the other little vampires. So, for the internal art, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Now it's time to move in relation to the story and its racing. So first things first, did we get any comic book references as to any of the previous issues? No, we didn't. But where did this story sort of help make up with it? We had the time period, such as in relation to the flashback to Yui, which we learnt that she's actually a child that survived the war in 1945 and was turned to a vampire in Hiroshima. The cast of characters consisting of Yui, we also had Laura, we had Raymond, we had Billy, and last but not least, Romy. The overall story rating I gave for this was a 7 out of 10, as things will be starting to change in the next issue, which will probably be the end of this first arc. So now it's time to move into Mind Management Bootleg. So, jumping into first things first, with Mind Management Bootleg by Matt Kindt, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that is happening inside of the story? Sure enough it does, to which I give it a 7.5, and as you can see here, to those who are not familiar with Matt Kindt's Mind Management, this series is a real... what's the word that I could explain it? It works a lot in around secrets, lies, but also seeing the truth between them both. So for those who sort of like the idea of like CIA games and that, this is probably a run that you would probably enjoy. Because the way he writes his stories, one story that I could recommend that he's worked on in the past is called Black Badge. And what it is, it's like a Black Ops version of the Scouts. Very interesting, and I think you'd probably enjoy that. So as you can see here, we've got The new character, we've got some of the things that are sort of like connected to the scene. We've also got some of the stuff that they have. And also the new character whose name is called Keto. Almost reminds me of the keto diet. Alright. I'll now move into showing some of the internal art around the beginning, middle, and end, as well as covering some of the things in relation to the story. So moving into some of the art around the beginning of the story, as he makes his way and he takes his little rat friend with him, and he starts to notice certain things because he's actually read something recently. I'll now jump towards the middle. As we start to jump towards the middle of the story, some certain things have already taken place as he's sort of like gone into sort of like some form type of interview to a location that he's gone to. And this is one of the tests that he has to take, and of course he's got to learn and notice how to take down his opponent, who he practically knows nothing about. As you can see here, he'd prefer to avoid a fight, remain passive, but he realizes in the next couple of pages that he does need to somewhat be active. Eventually reaching the end of the book, we end up having an encounter with the person who we met sort of like as the secretary on entry once again. Even though I didn't get to show her at the beginning, this character is sort of like seen as a secretary, and we do actually learn a little bit more. So now Keto is somewhat being asked to do a job because he managed to pass a number of those tests, and he's learned a little bit more about mind management and also what actually exists in this world. Care of Matt Kindt. So for the internal art, I gave it a 7 out of 10, as it still somewhat had that rustic type feel of the previous run in the series. But overall, let's move to the story. Now, for first things first, do we get an indication of time when this takes place? No, we don't. Though it wouldn't hurt to include it in the story. Moving into the locations, we had Zanzibar as to where this takes place. So we're looking at maybe someplace in Africa to maybe even South America. I could be a little bit wrong there on my geology, but I make mistakes. And of course, the mind management, spelled M-A-N-E in the story, even though it's M-I-N-D in the actual book title. And of course, the main character being Keto, who we see here. Overall, I gave this a 7.5 because I actually really enjoyed this, and it felt like picking up where I left off from, of what I've actually read of the graphic novels or the graphic novel omnibuses, or the omnibuses of mind management, and they are worth the pick up too. So for the overall story rating, I gave this a 7.5 out of 10. Until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.